Once upon a time, there was a man who was married to a woman, and they had 7 children, and the mother-in-law lived with them. And they lived in a small, simple cottage on the main road into town. And every day the man would come home from work, and his wife would be cooking, and she'd start to make demands on him about, could you just fix this, or could you do that? And his children would start running around, crying and playing and laughing and screaming. And his mother-in-law would start to say to him, where have you been? And start to kind of give him a bit of a hard time about just sitting back and not getting moving with things so that they could get their supper on the go. And so the man thought to himself, well, I mean, here I am, I work so hard every day, and I really deserve some peace at the end of the day. So he went to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, there must be something you can do for me. For every day I go to work, I work really hard, and I work long hours, and I come home, and my children are running around screaming and crying and playing, and my mother-in-law starts to nag me about things, and my wife starts to make demands on me that I need to do this and that, and jobs that need to be done, and I just want to be able to come home and relax. And the rabbi said, well, he said, I can help you, but you have to do everything I tell you, and you can't question me, and you just have to do it. And if you agree to that, then I will help you. So the man agreed. And the rabbi said, well, what I want you to do you have some chickens? He said, yes. And he said, I want you to go into the barn and bring the chickens into your house at the end of the day when you go home after work tomorrow. And the man said, okay. So the man went off and thought about what the rabbi had said, and he thought, what a strange thing. But he said he would do what the rabbi said. So he went out after work that day and he brought the chickens in. And so there were his children running and laughing and crying and playing, and his wife was telling him to do this and that, and his mother-in-law was nagging him, and there were chickens flying all over the house, and there was feathers going up in the sky, and he thought to himself after the first and second and third day, because there was feathers everywhere and the place was a total mess, that there must be some problem. So he went back to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, there must be a problem, because I brought the chickens in and things have only gotten worse. And he said, well, I'll tell you. He said, do you have a goat? He said, yes, I have a goat. And he said, well, I want you to go out into the barn and I want you to get the goat, and I want you to bring the goat into your house, and that will help. And so the man went home and he dragged the goat into the house, and he came home the next day after work, and there was his children running and crying and playing, and his mother-in-law was nagging him to do this and that, and his wife was asking to do these other little jobs, and the chickens were flying and feathers were flying all over the place, and the goat was eating his favorite chair and butting him every time he turned around. And he thought to himself, this is terrible. This is absolutely awful. So he ran back to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, this is only making my life more miserable. And the rabbi said, okay, I'll tell you what I'd like you to do. Do you have a cow? And he said, yes, I have a cow. And he said, I want you to go into the barn and bring the cow into the house. And the man looked at the rabbi and thought, how can this help? But the rabbi just put up his hand and said, you said you would do whatever I told you to do. So the man went home and he dragged the cow into the house, and he went off to work, and then he came back that day, and at the end of the day, of a long, hard day at work, the children were crying and playing and laughing and climbing all over him, and his wife was telling him to do this and that. His mother-in-law was nagging him, and the chickens were flapping and flying all over the place, and the goat was butting, and part of the whole arm of his chair was now gone. And he thought to himself, oh, it can't get any worse. And then the cow did his business right in the middle of this man's house. He couldn't believe it, and what a stink. He just couldn't believe what was happening to him. So he ran down the road and burst in on the rabbi and said, Rabbi, what am I going to do? My life is totally out of control. And the rabbi said, okay. He said, go home, put the chickens back in the coop, and put the goat back out in the yard, and take your cow back out into the barn, and come home tomorrow. Clean up that great mess and come home tomorrow after work. So the man ran home, and he took the chickens out into the coop, and he put the goat out in the yard, and he put the cow out in the barn, and him and his wife and his mother-in-law and the children cleaned the place until it was shining. and the man went off to work. And that night when the man came home from work, well, he sat in his chair and he looked back and he listened to the sound of his children laughing and crying and playing. And he listened to the sound of his wife saying, "Can you just remember to do this job for me?" And he listened to his mother-in-law nagging, and he thought, ah, this is the